Hey guys, how's it going and welcome back to another episode. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about expats. That's right, we're going to be talking about you. We're going to be talking about, what your reputation is out here in Mexico, whether or not people like you, meaning do other Mexicans like you, do other expats like you, not just like you, but, what do they think of you? What do you think of them? And, just all the topics that have to do with this, because, there's a lot of people out there that just simply don't want to move to Mexico because they're afraid of what, the perception of Americans or gringos or foreigners or expats are out here, and there's a lot of misconceptions out there as to what what really people think out here, whether or not they actually do like you, they want you to be in their country, they want you to come, and so on and so forth. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about just expats. It's going to be an expat friendly episode. Now, a little caveat, before we get too into it, I know there's going to be in the comments section already, because I've already covered this topic before. What is an expat? So basically, an expat stands for patriot, and that's just a fancy term or a fancy way of saying foreigner for an American, or kind of any English speaking person out there. So if you're an English speaking person, especially if you're coming from the USA, you prefer the term expat as opposed to foreigner. But that's all I'm talking about. I'm just talking about foreigners out here. But why did I bring up the expat? What did I put it in the title and so on and so forth? Well, for obvious reasons, because again, it triggers a lot of people, good, bad, and everything in between. And this is exactly what we're going to be talking about here, as to why are expats, why are American foreigners so triggering to so many people out there, no matter who you are, whether you are a Mexican that lives out here, whether you are an actual expat, foreigner from the USA or what have you. It doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, that's what we're going to be talking about today in today's episode. The reality is that, if you ask the typical Mexican out there, what is it, what do they think? What do they really think about, expats? It's going to vary, it just like anything else. The answer is going to totally vary on so many factors. But the reality is that most Mexicans, most people out here, they, like expats, they like, foreigners that are coming out here and spending money, growing the economy, wanting to live here, loving the culture, so on and so forth. There's a lot of Americans, a lot of Canadians, again, a lot of foreigners that are moving out here, and, they're assimilating, very well. And, Mexicans are very friendly people. They're very nice people. They're very awesome people. So at the end of the day, they're just going to love you. It's not going to be that big of a deal. So, it's all depending. Again, we've talked about it multiple times on this video and on this channel. It's all going to really be dependent on you. It's going to be dependent on whether or not you assimilate to the culture, how friendly you are, how nice you are, whether you want to speak Spanish, learn Spanish, so on and so forth. So, the thing is that, it really just depends on who you ask. There's a lot of Mexicans out there that will disagree with me and say, oh, get out of here, get out of my country, I don't like you, so on and so forth. Just like you're going to find in the U.S., you're going to find people that say the same thing, or in Canada or anything else. Hey, immigrants, get out of my home, get out of my country. You're going to see that here as well, just like any other country. But it's not like a big prominent thing. Again, at the end of the day, there's a big relationship, between, the U.S. and Mexico. It's a long relationship, since like forever, and so, with that being said, most Mexicans are already used to the typical gringo or the typical American or the tourist or the this or the that. So, with that, all that being said, at the end of the day, Mexicans, they again, depending on who you're talking to will depend on how they look at you. A lot of Mexicans, let's say working in the tourist areas, they're just looking at you with dollar signs, just like they're looking at you, any other tourist, they just, they know that American tourists are different than European tourists and so on and so forth. So again, you're going to get a little bit of a different treatment. But when it comes to like, other parts of Mexico, let's say you're going to like a village and you're really interested in like how their, how their customs are, how they live their life, how things are on a day-to-day, they're going to love that kind of stuff, for the most part. You know what I mean? As long as you're going out there and you're being respectful, and you really, really want to know more about them. You want to, again, maybe even live out there, integrate, and so on and so forth. Yeah, they're going to love you. They're going to embrace you. It's all good. It's just the problematic expats. The problematic foreigners are the ones that come out here, and they try to again be exactly the same way that they were in the USA, meaning they don't want to assimilate to like the culture. They don't want to assimilate in any way possible at all, and again, they find it very difficult to live out here. And because of that, you are going to find problematic expats, and you'll see it once you're out here. It's kind of like hard to explain until you're out here and then you see it. And a lot of Mexicans know that. A lot of Mexicans know that there are good Americans, good expats, good Canadians, good foreigners, and then there are bad ones. And who are the bad ones? The bad ones are the ones that are trying to scam other Americans, trying to scam other foreigners, or again, even other Mexicans. And I can go on and on. There are always going to be bad apples out there, and but they're small. That's a small group. It's not like the most of the people out there are not scammers and bad people or anything like that. In fact, there's something completely different. And what do I mean by completely different? Well, like I said, a lot of people just come out here and they just want to continue living their lives exactly the same way as they were in the USA. So they don't want to assimilate. In fact, not just not want to assimilate, but they might want to just stay in their little enclaves just with their other expat friends. They might look down on the local people. They might come out here and be like, oh, I am part of high society. I'm part of, certain group of people. Whatever, you know what I mean? And it is what it is. It's just like, the next topic I was going to bring up, in the sense of like, it's just like high school, you know what I mean? That's what a lot of people just end up finding out. So look, there's a lot of reasons why people move out here. If you have a similar story to mine, remember, I just came out here, with a few bucks, $1,500 to my name, you know what I mean? I rented an Airbnb for a month, and then I just kind of like figured it out. Now, the story is a little longer than that, but I came out here, with a completely different mentality, and I spoke Spanish. Remember, my name is Jose Arteaga, so like, I'm Cuban, I'm not Mexican. But at the end of the day, I was able to assimilate, within the Mexican culture very quickly, very easily, because, I spoke Spanish, and I grew up in Miami, and everything's Spanish and very similar to what I found out here. So, for me, I never even seeked out any expats. And there's going to be a lot of you guys out there that, again, you guys have traveled before, or you guys know Spanish, or I can go on, and there's no reason for you to go out there and seek expats. And so if you don't have to seek expats, that puts you at a big advantage in many cases, because again, sometimes when you are with other expats, they are just the same thing that you left from back home. Now, again, it's very good for you to mingle with some expats, especially if you're living in a place, as opposed to just traveling through. And it's simply because, again, at the end of the day, you're going to want to connect, with people that are from back home. So again, if you're Canadian, you might want to have a few Canadian friends that just get you, just like anything else, just like life. Everybody just has a handful of friends. If you're American, you're going to have a handful of friends, they're like-minded, just like me and my bros out there. You guys know who you are, because we have we're like-minded, just like any other friends anywhere else. Okay. But, unfortunately, what happens is that a lot of people come out here, they don't assimilate very well, they don't want to learn the language, and they are forced, to basically just hang out with other expats, and they don't have any other friends out there that are, Spanish speaking or Mexicans. Again, there's Mexicans that speak English as well, but they don't, they're not really integrating that well, and because of that, again, they come out here and they just mingle with other expats, and before you know it, you quickly realize, hey, wait a minute, like, the most, the dissatisfying thing about living in Mexico is other expats, and again, it's just like a whole complicated issue. But like I said, for some people, it becomes like a whole high school thing, where it's just, they are only hanging out with expats, and then it's just, it becomes like in that Seinfeld episode, that Club Buena Vista, phase 2, that whole thing.
Bruh.
Anyways, so the point is that, the reality is that, most Mexicans, just typical Mexicans, they're not ruining Mexico. In fact, they're not affecting Mexico in any way that you might think. Yes, in some places, they're coming in, they're buying property, they're, living, they're doing their thing, but they're not the ones that are mostly gentrifying. In fact, what's happening is that in a lot of these areas that are getting gentrified, again, like I've said before, I've talked about before, I've shown you guys before, it's all done by other Mexicans. That's it. At the end of the day, it's gentrification for Mexicans, by Mexicans, just all Mexicans, made in Mexico. But yes, of course, you're going to find, things like a Walmart out here. That's obviously an American influence. You're going to find Chili's. You're going to find, a McDonald's, KFC, all the fast food. You're also going to find entrepreneurs that are coming out here. And, I've seen all kinds of things. Not just opening up restaurants and bringing, that whole thing, of fine dining out here or whatever it is, but many other things. I recently saw a friend of mine online in which, he had like this whole setup, at his house, set up by an electrician, and it was like super professional, well done, and it was awesome, because he was having some power issues in this nice house that he, bought. And, today on Facebook, I was just checking out and I saw, the guy that did the work was another expat. And I was like, oh, wow, that's pretty cool. Yada, yada, yada. So, there's a lot of cool expats out there. There's, a lot of expats that, again, that are integrating great and wonderfully and, all that good stuff. But, at the end of the day, like, for the most part, the typical Mexicans out there, they're not looking at it like any other thing, again, some of them are going to not like you. Some of them are going to like you just like anything else. In places like I said, whether it's Mexico City, where you hear it a lot, or Merida, like where I live, where you're seeing all this footage. A lot of Mexicans they're enjoying the fact that you're coming out here and, again, bringing money, not just you, but other foreigners, and, it is, again, you're not the only foreigners. It's not just expats. There are people with a lot of money from all over the world. Remember, we're living in a very, interesting time in human history right now. And Mexico is going to be one of those safe havens. It's a booming economy, that has so many things going for it. And a lot of smart people with a lot of money know that. And they're coming out here and they're investing and they're helping build and they're helping grow, or they're simply just living out here, whether they're digital nomads or just regular people like you and me and others. Some people are looking to retire, but at the end of the day, and they have all kinds of retirements and all kinds of incomes and things like that. But at the end of the day, everyone's stimulating the economy. Everyone's out here, in a more, in a very positive, note. And so the typical Mexican, they're looking at you, however they're looking at you, whether they're looking at you with dollar signs, or whether they're looking at you like, oh, wow, cool. These people that are coming from America, which I love. I love a lot of things about the culture and things, that is life out there. Wow, this guy's my neighbor now. So I'll be able to practice my English with an actual American. And this guy, also wants to, know more about the best taco place. Oh, maybe I'll just take him to the best taco place. And, before you know it, you're making friends, you're watching football together, and so on and so forth. All right. And that's the thing, like it's if you come out here and you integrate, you're going to quickly find out that, typical Mexican is just like your Mexican neighbor back in the USA. That's all it is. And the more Mexican neighborhood you move into, again, the deeper you go into Mexico, just like the same as the USA, the deeper you go into, immigrant neighborhoods, well, yeah, the more you're going to have to know Spanish, the more you're going to stick out like a sore thumb. But at the end of the day, they're going to accept you. They're going to love you. The best tacos are in, the most dangerous part of East LA, and so on and so forth. There's the same thing here, the best tacos are sometimes in the roughest neighborhoods or the roughest looking neighborhoods, and so on and so forth. And so, yeah, you could just, stick to the fancy neighborhoods and pay a lot of money and, again, try to, keep up with the Joneses, just like you were trying to do in the USA that obviously failed, for whatever reason. And so now you're coming out here and you're trying to emulate the same thing, and you're going to these fancy places and you're paying, exorbitant prices, for tacos, when you could just be paying, pennies on the dollar for tacos, way better tacos, and have way better friends, and so on and so forth, as opposed to, whatever it is you're trying to do out here. Like I said, I keep bringing up that whole high school thing, not because I've experienced it, and that's why I don't really touch too much on it, because, high school for me was pretty great. You know what I mean? Again, I threw 4 touchdowns for Polk High, so, I had a pretty awesome, high school, but at the end of the day, I know a lot of people, they come out here and they're trying to just recreate that in one shape, form, or another. I know once you get to a certain age, it's hard to make friends. I'm part of that. I get that. I get everything. I get you guys. Trust me. All right. But the thing is, it's like, again, it just depends on who you are out there and what's your mindset. And remember, we talked about this before, and how you're going to take it out here. You know what I mean? How it's more about, when we're talking about expats, it's more about the fact that you're going to quickly find out that there's not that many of you. Again, if you stick to certain areas, touristy areas, you stick to the expat enclaves, expat neighborhoods, again, yeah, they're everywhere, of course. Like everywhere. Just like in the U.S., you're gonna have like, Chinatown, Little Havana, Little Jamaica, whatever, Little Tokyo, all that stuff. The same thing here. There are little places, again, and that are just full of Americans or full of expats, full of foreigners. But that's not the case all over the place, and that's the thing. You're going to quickly find out that once you are really just in Mexico, it's like, oh, wait a minute, I'm the only one here. I'm the only American here. Everyone else is Mexican. Or again, depending on where you are, you say you're in Mexico City, you're going to see so many people from all over Mexico, all over the world, and you're going to find out, wait a minute, Mexico is pretty diverse. Mexico is just like a Spanish Mexican version of the USA. And again, so many Mexicans out there are always, complaining, about the fact like, oh, why do you call, Americans America, we're American, Mexico is Americans, we're all American. And it's true. We're all American. In fact, this is the United States of Mexico. Just like you have the United States of America. All right. Mexico is actually, again, fairly similar to, what you might be used to back home. But again, it's all going to really just depend on you as to, whether you're going to, be able to assimilate out here or not. And again, the question keeps coming up, are you guys, are expats, destroying Mexico? Not really. Not really. Mexico's a very strong country, and it's survived a lot, and it's going through a lot, and it's doing its own thing. And, you're definitely not, as an expat, coming out here and affecting it in such a way in which you're, again, changing anything, not the way you think. And so, you're not the one that is gentrifying out here. There's a lot of people out here already that speak English. Again, just depends on the part of Mexico you're at. In some parts of Mexico, like Merida, down here in the south, not so much English. But if you go anywhere across the northern border, everybody's speaking English, okay, for the most part. And a lot of people do, in Mexico City and all over the place. Again, it's important to speak English. Why wouldn't you? If Mexico's growing, the economy's growing, everybody, the whole thing is just blowing up in a good way. Well, why wouldn't you learn English, right? And especially if it's your neighbor, you love the culture, I can go on and on. So with that said, again, most Mexicans love expats, love foreigners. Sure, they love you if you're from Germany, if you're from Canada, if you're from, all these places. Yeah, it's cool. But they really, really like Americans. Again, can be taken, many ways. Like in the sense of like, they know that you guys are the big empire, you're the big brother, you're the big neighbor. Again, Mexico is a completely different culture. Everybody out here is always laughing, having a good time, making fun, busting balls, as they like to say back in the U.S. So, Mexico in a sense, would always be busting, balls, busting the U.S.'s balls in a sense. And like, don't take yourself too seriously, and all that good stuff. So it's a relationship. It's like a brotherhood, really, to tell you the truth. And most Mexicans, even if they might be pissed off that, the U.S. took half of its territory, even if they might be pissed at the way that, they get treated in the U.S. and so on and so forth, they're still nice. They're not going to treat you bad as long as you don't treat them bad. So, they're not going to be coming out here. I mean, they're not going to be coming up to you and, demanding, that you get your immigration status fixed, that you start paying taxes, that you start doing all these things that they don't do, or that, they know that you demand from them in your home country. No, they're really easygoing. They're chill. They're relaxed. They really just don't care. They mind their business. All right. And that's the thing. That's another awesome thing about Mexico, is that out here, again, they mind their business. They're not out there giving a crap, about expats. Again, there's always outliers. There's always people out there, like I said, that do care, that do want to pay, have you pay taxes, and want you to do all these things. But, at the end of the day, the typical Mexican just really doesn't care that much. And that's a good thing, because they just go with the flow. They're very easygoing and chill. And they know you guys, they know gringos, they know Americans, they know expats, and so that's the thing. And so I know in this episode I've used that word expat multiple times, and it's been very heavy use out here. And I prefer to use foreigner these days more than anything else, the longer I live out here. But the reality is that, most Americans, most people that come from the USA, we consider ourselves patriots. And once we're abroad, we're just expatriates, henceforth, expat. And that's it. So if you call yourself an expat, you're an expatriate. If you don't want to be called, a patriot, you don't want to be considered a patriot or what have you, then don't call yourself an expat. Just call yourself a foreigner, what have you, Mexican, whatever you want to be called. But, again, a lot of us, just like all the immigrants that flood the USA all the time, have flooded the USA since forever. They've always, stayed true to, again, where they come from. Like, again, Italians, love being from Italy. Cubans, like me, I love being from Cuba. Again, we are very proud of our background, of our heritage, of where we come from, even though we are 1,000% American. And so now that we as Americans are foreigners, we have to expatriate. We have to leave our country. We have to leave the USA. And again, we're patriots, and a lot of us feel like, we've been pushed out, kicked out of our country, been, forced out. And so, again, that's why I think we use that term expat, expatriate, because, we're still a little sore, we're still a little bitter, we're still a little upset that, we had to leave. Now, in retrospect, not going to be any happier. The best thing that ever happened to me was coming to Mexico. And I love it out here, and I would never, ever, ever really consider going back to the USA unless, it goes back to, what it used to be, which is what Mexico is right now. And again, that's why I love it out here so much, because Mexico is, basically what the US was like 50 years ago, 60 years ago. Now, for a lot of people, they think that's no bueno. They don't like that. Well, again, Mexico might not be for you. But if you miss, the good old US of A, then you'll love Mexico. You know what I mean? And again, I think it's, for some people, they prefer going to like, Asia. They prefer to be an expat anywhere else. You know what I mean? But Mexico, they want to go to other places. And I get it. But, for a lot of people, Mexico, the thing is, it's like, for a lot of Americans, Mexico has always been part of America, part of a culture. It's always been, a brotherhood. We've been very close. Again, you can go to places like Texas and they have Tex-Mex food. You go to New Mexico and the official language of New Mexico is Spanish, not English. And I could go on and on, So, again, there's a big, history, that goes on between both countries. But at the end of the day, when it just comes down to it, do they hate the typical American or the typical expat? No, they don't. Do they hate foreigners? No, they don't. They don't hate anybody, It's just, it is what it is. In fact, you'll probably hear the typical Mexican say that Mexican's biggest enemy is another Mexican. And the same thing I say to you, the biggest enemy, the biggest problem, the biggest, situation, bad situation, is that you're ever going to have out here for the most part is probably going to be with another expat. If you're ever going to get into like a fight with somebody out here, it's probably going to be with another expat. It's probably somebody scammed you or did you wrong. It's probably going to be with another expat. If you had a relationship go sour for whatever reason, it's probably going to be another expat, and that could go on and on. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of really awesome expats out there, a lot of awesome foreigners out there. And, you're going to find your tribe once you're out here. You're going to find your gang. You're going to see how awesome it is. But the reality is that, you're really only going to find, how awesome it is if you just, live like the other Mexicans and just move out here and integrate with everybody else, like you see a lot of immigrants do in the good old US of A and other places, and they just integrate. And, before you know it, Ahmed, is, a third generation, Iraqi that lives in the USA, and he hasn't been to Iraq in, ever. But his parents came from there, or grandparents or what have you. So same thing out here. A lot of, influence, from so many other countries, a lot of diversity, a lot of immigrants that have come to Mexico throughout its history, and is, again, not as diverse as the USA, but pretty close, pretty darn close. And so now when you come out here, it's kind of like backwards. It's the opposite, where now you are part of that diversity. You're the immigrant. You're, part of all that. And, again, whether you want to call yourself an expat or not, it's up to you. For me, I prefer to be called a foreigner. I call myself a foreigner, but hey, sometimes it slips. A lot of people just call me an expat, and it is what it is. You know what I mean? It's just, just like, being called a gringo. Honestly, I'd rather be called an expat, than a gringo. And honestly, I'd rather just be called Jose, but whatever. It is what it is. So with all that being said, I think we've had a long enough episode. I think we've kind of like covered this topic and beat it to death. If you want to hear more, you want to talk about it more, please, let's continue it down in the comment section. I hope you guys enjoyed today's ride through Merida, Yucatan. Want to give a big shout out to all the members out there, all the old members, all the new members, all the, again, patrons, every single one of you guys that's been with me since forever, or, just came on board yesterday. So shout out to all the members, all the patrons. Shout out to every single one of you guys, all you contributors out there. All you guys are always, sending either questions or, buying merchandise or just sending a few bucks, or just doing nothing at all. Just, again, watching an ad, or not even that at all. Even if you're just, subscribing, liking, sharing, whatever it is you're doing, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And again, if you're watching all the way through, you're still here. You're here. I really appreciate you. You're the best. Also, please don't forget to check out my website. On my website, you can get all kinds of free information on moving to Mexico, all kinds of videos, showing you how to, find a home to live in, or, all their informative stuff about immigration or whatever it is. Again, check out my website, tons of free information, and see what videos answer your questions. With that being said, also, if you want to ask me any questions, all right, you want to book a one-on-one consultation, you want to just ask me one question, again, check out my website and you can find out more information on how, again, we could just talk, and you can ask me anything. We can talk about anything you want and all that good stuff. So with all that being said, you already know the deal, guys. If you like this kind of content, don't forget to please like, please subscribe, please share, please hit the bell icon, but more importantly than anything else, please stay awesome. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye, guys.